Good day. Welcome once again to LRB 3073. My name is James Gomia, and this is our fifth edition. We're going to be talking about two things: the revenue we take in and the money that we spent in Liberia as a republic. We still have not given you results of the votes against the US dollar and having a Liberian dollar. People are still coming in with views. So we're going to let you know. But what we want to do is two things we want to tackle is how can we as Liberians, as government, bring in enough money so that we can go out there to be borrowing money and bringing people into our country that don't have the interest of our country at heart. People that are coming into our country because they need our stuff for themselves, not for us. But we need to be able to at least be able to do those things ourselves. Our government should be able to help us. So, as member of 30 LRB 3073, those are some of the things we are doing. Our main objective is to be able to put clear direction of where we want our country to go as citizens of this country, to try to influence our policy makers and talk to our stakeholders to be able to change the direction in which our country is headed. We've been in this direction for a very long time and things have not changed. I just want to give you a quick example of how we do our budget and what comes out of it so we can clearly understand. So it'll be a lot of numbers, but I want you to just take your time and listen carefully. We're not going to be long. So today I want us to look at the Liberian budget approved in 2023. It is intended to give us a little understanding of what is happening in Liberia. The national budget outlines how much money the government plans to generate and spend in a fiscal year. According to Section 651 of Amendment and Reinstatement of the Amended Public Financial Management (PFM) Act of 2021, the government of Liberia, through the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, estimated an amount of US $782.94 million for the national budget for fiscal 2023, which marks the second beginning of a new fiscal period, which starts January 1st and ends December 31st. The government of Liberia anticipated overall revenue of $782.94 million. It also anticipated $672.94 million coming from domestic sources and $110 million coming from external sources. Okay? I hope you understand that. Out of the $782.94 million, the government at the time estimated that $672.94 million will be coming from our country, from Liberia, that domestic sources. Okay? Then the remaining $110 million will be coming from external sources. Okay? The two amounts will give us what they projected and they budgeted for at that time. Now let us listen keenly. $553.61 million accounts for the majority of domestic revenue, mostly from income and profit taxes, foreign trade, and goods and services. Non-tax revenue is estimated to be $119.33 million. Okay? So those two represent our domestic sources. Okay? The 553.61 and the 119.33. The reason it's separated is the 193.33, which represents 17.73%, primarily came from property income taxes. Okay? And the 553.61 million came from mostly from income and profit taxes, foreign trade, and goods and services. So those two, you put it together, gave us the $672 million that we talked about earlier for our domestic sources. Good. So let's move on. Now, as I said earlier, the total expenditure was estimated in 2023 to be $782.94 million. Now, with recurrent expenditures accounting with recurrent expenditures accounting for $634.90 million. That was 81.09%. Okay? Now, recurrent expenditure is funds that is spent on government's welfare, like salary and all kinds of benefits. Those two numbers are what we, as member of LRB 3073, need to work on. So I want you all to understand it very well. We took in $782.94 million. That's our national budget. The recurrent expenditure was $634.90 million. Okay? So after we spent all that money on government benefits and salary and all of that, our budget, we are only left with $148.05 million to do whatever we want to do to develop the country, to help bring good clean water, build roads, electricity, healthcare, education, all social programs that we need in the country. That's the amount that is left after we have taken care of all the government employees and their benefits. That's what's left for us to develop Liberia. Now, is that the road we want to be on? Definitely not. Okay? So, yes, the interesting thing that happened during that time, that $148.05 million only represent 18.91% of the budget that goes towards all the things we need to do in Liberia. Where we all be crying, we say government need to do this, they need to go healthcare, they need to do this. That's only 18.91% though. So I hope you understand that. So those are the numbers I want us to look at. Now, in 2023, what the government did now, that 148.05 that was left, the government set aside 36%, 27%, and 22% of the total PSRP, which is Public Sector Investment Plan, okay, of that to finance projects in the infrastructure, basic needs of the country, of citizens, energy and environment, transparency and accountability sectors of that country. Now, guess what they left out? There was nothing for healthcare, nothing for education, nothing for all the other things. So all it means is that particular year, they were not planning to spend anything on education, on healthcare, on water, on all the other things that we need to survive as a nation. That particular budget said, no, we're not spending on that. Okay? So they left it out completely. Okay? I hope we understand. Now, this is what we want to do. We need to increase the revenue that we take in. So as member of LRB 3073, that's what we need to design a policy that we can influence policymakers to help us put forward a plan that will take in more revenue. With all the resources we have, the natural resources, the human resources, the fertile land that God has put Liberia on, our with everything we have, you want to tell me we cannot generate enough revenue to help build our nation and to take care of our people? That's where we need all of you to give your ideas. Go to Liberia 3073 at gmail.com and put your ideas there, because we're going to be compiling all these things. When we hit the ground in Liberia, we want to be able to go to people, to places, and present these things to them and say, listen, we need to do things differently. We have been doing this over and over and over and over, and things have not changed. So we need to change. So that's our objective now. So that's bringing in more revenue. We can do that. Liberia can even raise more than $3 billion a year in that country. We can do that if we know what to do, and we close all loopholes, and we hold these foreign big companies that come and take our natural resources. We hold them accountable, and they pay their fair share of what they need to give us. We can raise more than that in Liberia. And we don't need to go to China to borrow money. We don't need to go to America to borrow money. We don't need to go to World Bank. We don't need to go to IMF. We don't need to go to African Development Bank. We don't need to go to all these places. But that's for different story. We're going to come to that. But I just want you to remember that the funds that we took in 2023 was not enough, and the fund that we are taking in now is not enough. How can we increase the revenue? The next thing we need to attack as member of this organization that we're putting together is the expenditure for recurrent revenue is too high. Why are we putting 80% of our budget to salary and benefits? It makes no sense. So we need to come up with a plan where we can reduce that. It has to be reduced. Even though if we are taking in more revenue, it doesn't mean we should just be paying that. We need to also reduce that, bring it below at least 50%. It's not a lot. I know many of you that are listening, many of you will not run your household like that. You're not going to take $200 into your house and then you pay the cook, you pay the person that cutting the grass, you pay the person that cleaning everything. Then at the end of the day, you tell your family, we only got 20% to survive on. So all of you got to go out there to go look for food, because at 20%, we're finish paying all the people that can wash our clothes, that can do this, that can do that. You will not run your household like that. So why are we running Liberia like that? So that's why we need to come up with a plan so that this recurrent expenditure can be reduced at least from 80. Let's go little by little. Bring it below 50. Let's say at least maybe 40%. Then at least we left with 60% to develop our country with. Then we got to be going all around begging. So, well, we don't want to sound like an old drum, but that's the main purpose. That's why we wanted to let all of us know where we stand. Now, listen carefully. I told you guys earlier that in that fiscal year of 2023, no funds was allotted, little or no fund was allotted to finance projects in the social sectors of education, health, agriculture. There was nothing, implying that no large capital projects for that sector were intended to be implemented in that fiscal year. Okay? So we dealt with that. Now, before we close, I just want us to look at the two things, the two expenditures that we talk about. Expenditure, most of you that really don't know, expenditure is the amount of money the government intends to spend on the needs of its citizens and the country's improvement. Okay? It consists of two components: recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure. Okay? So those are the two. The total expenditure we know was 782.94. The recurrent spending or expenditure was 634.90. Don't also forget, that particular year, we allocated $99.81 million towards debt servicing. Okay? Money that we borrow. Okay. So basically, as I said, we have said enough today. The two things we want to work on: bringing in more revenue. How we're going to do that? Please help us. All of us can put ideas together and we're going to share, and we'll put it in our policy documents. And how can we reduce the recurrent expenditure from 80% to at least 40%? Let's try to cut it in half at least before we bring it down a little bit. Okay? Let's do that. So that's it for today. I'm James Gomez. I want to say thank you for listening. Please share the audio. Share the audio. We want to reach as many people as possible, and we are still recruiting. And we are also asking all of you to make your decision on what currency Liberia needs to be using going forward, because we're going to put that into our policy documents that will be on the ground trying to influence people who are responsible to help change the direction of our country and also change the structure of governance in our country. We need to advocate for local government elections. Have a wonderful day. I'm James Gomez.